I'm the Weather Dude, welcome back, and today we are going to be talking about Invest 92L and the potential for it to become a tropical storm or even a hurricane further on down the line. But before we get started, be sure to like and subscribe so you do not miss the best weather content out there, and we're just going to get right into it here. Starting with, where do we usually see these tropical systems or these invests, whatever, start to develop in June? Well, it's the middle of the month, and normally we start to see these develop in the Caribbean, maybe in the Gulf of Mexico, and track into the Gulf Coast or maybe up the East Coast. But where this storm is right now, this invest, is really strange. It's all the way out in the Atlantic. Yes, it's only June, and we're already starting to see one of these. Like just for reference, we don't usually start to see these till like later in July, and then in August and September we see like these waves come off of the main development region here in the tropical Atlantic, and they form and they start to develop into tropical storms and hurricanes. Well, it's only June and this is already happening, so that could be a potential sign for the rest of the hurricane season, but we shall see. Over the next 2 days, it actually has a medium 40% chance to develop, but over the next 7 days, has a 70% chance to develop into a depression or storm. So it's a tropical wave located several hundred miles south-southwest of the Cabo Verde Islands. It's a broad area of disorganized showers and thunderstorms. We're going to take a look at the satellite here in just a second. Environmental conditions, though, do appear conducive for additional development, and we could see a tropical depression likely to form by the early to middle next week, and then maybe a tropical storm after that, while the system moves westward at 15 to 20 miles an hour across the eastern and central tropical Atlantic. So again, you can see Invest 92L right here, and there are a few questions regarding its track, because depending on how the Bermuda high sets up, or maybe another high pressure over to the west of that, maybe it could go into the Caribbean, maybe it could go up and off the East Coast or away from the coast. So there's still a lot of question marks here regarding this system. But one thing for sure is it's tracking across the Atlantic. It's got some conducive conditions, and we're going to take a look at all those in this video. So you can see the storm right now. Maximum winds of 20 knots, about 25 miles an hour. Pressure is about 1,011 millibars. So again, it's a recently developed invest, of course, so still getting its act together. And for reference, a tropical depression has winds of less than 39 miles per hour, whereas tropical storm is 39 to 73 miles per hour. So let's take a look at the satellite here. The visible satellite looks a little bit more impressive than this, right? We do see some thunderstorms. They're rotating a little bit. We're starting to see some development closer to center, all right? But you can definitely see a rotating area of clouds and then showers and thunderstorms. It's starting to get its act together, but it's not quite there yet. And it does have time to. I mean, the shear is definitely looking like it's a little bit lower right now. You can kind of see like that little center right there that's trying to form there as well. We look at the visible satellite. If we play this here, yeah, you can see where we're starting to see those showers and thunderstorms blossom. And of course, as we get into the later afternoon hours, of course, that's where thunderstorms are going to be able to blossom due to the high moisture content in the atmosphere. A lot of daytime heating, of course. You can even see it happening over here as some little thunderstorm flare-ups away from the system as well. Definitely a big blossom happened earlier on the northeast side as well. So again, those are just your things to look for, especially when looking on the visible satellite imagery. Again, here's your low center, about 26.2 degrees west and about 10 degrees north. So it's sitting pretty far south, because you can see it's south of the Cabo Verde Islands. Right, and we do have some warmer waters down here, and we'll actually show those in just a little bit. Let's actually take a look at some model track guidance. You can see where the storm is right now. It's not moving particularly fast. All right, so this was kind of like earlier this morning. Like this is around between like midnight, 2 a.m. around that time frame. So you can see here's where it was then. You can see where it will be 24 hours from then, 48 hours, and so on. You can see by about 5 to 7 days or so, it will be near the Lesser Antilles. I think that's where a lot of the modeling agrees. Right, it'll track towards the Lesser Antilles in some fashion. It'll approach it from the east. Again, the question is just what happens after that 5 or 7 day period. What happens after that? Again, does it track south? Does it bend up away to north? Does it do something in the middle? All possibilities that we do not know quite yet. But what we do know pretty much for sure, and the models definitely agree on, is that it will be tracking, maybe not a direct hit, but it will be tracking very close to the Lesser Antilles as of right now. If we take a look here at the GEFS ensembles, I can actually give all these maps a little refresh, just in case there are any. Oh yeah, actually we got some new model track guidance. These are actually the 12Z model runs, and again, you can kind of see the change a little bit to the south. Actually, just set these up like an hour ago, but we must be getting new maps in. But you can see right here, you can see the more change to the south, maybe a more direct hit to the Lesser Antilles. And this bend to the south could actually mean a trek closer to the U.S., although U.S. impacts, if if there were, they'd be like 10 days to even close to 2 weeks out. So we're not really like focused on that. It's very far down the road. But that is certainly a possibility. Even though maybe not seem likely, we could see some U.S. impacts. All right, if we take a look at GEFS tracks here, you can see definitely some strengthening going on down the road as well. You'll see a lot of models agree on the strength. And you can see, again, pretty much tracking towards lesser Antilles, with some models, anticipate 990 or even 980 millibars of pressure, and then maybe a little bit bend to the north. Of course, these few outliers, if you will, are kind of, because this black line is like the median, the average. You can see it kind of dragging that line up there. But again, some models have it going to the Eastern Caribbean. Some have it going out to sea in the Northern Atlantic. All possibilities right now. But this is Invest 92L, and this is definitely where it will be headed. If we take a look at the GEPS tracks here, these look like they do not have not updated yet. But you can see a couple tracks closer to the United States, around the Bahamas. One going out to sea. There's not many on this map here. Again, the majority, again, have it going towards the Lesser Antilles. And again, there are some pretty conducive conditions out there right now. We're going to take a look at those in just a bit. If we look at the intensity guidance here, updated for the 12Z model runs here, you can see pretty much all of them, not all of them, so always some outliers, but pretty much all of them have them becoming a tropical storm, and a good majority, I would say, have it becoming some kind of hurricane, Cat 1, Cat 2, even Cat 4 on this HMNI model there. And a lot of these models I actually do not know. I do know the Icon model. There are some that you do know on here. Right? But again, tropical storm and hurricane status is certainly possible here with Invest 92L. We take a look at the sea surface temperatures, and oh boy, I mean, they are warm. I mean, I would almost say hot. All right, so here is pretty much where the storm is right now. I would say somewhere in this zone. So it's sitting in some warm waters already. It'll be staying in that for quite a while, and even getting even further above average as it makes its trek off. Because remember, it's going to be pretty much tracking in this direction, right through those very warm waters. All right, it will stay that way until it gets into the Northern Atlantic, should it go that way. Because the Caribbean and the Gulf are also, a pretty good bit above average right now, but especially out in the tropical Atlantic. Like, this is a very concerning sign for the hurricane season here. Take a look at the actual sea surface temperatures. I do have another map that shows this in greater detail. But you can see here, well above the 25, you can see that 25-degree line that I was telling you about. That's going to advance north, right? That's like your 77-degree line. That's like your bare minimum if you really want to form a good tropical storm. That's really advanced its way further north, and we've got these 80-plus degree waters really starting to set in now. You might think, okay, that sounds normal. Why is it saying, it's so far above average, like 3 degrees Celsius above average? Well, really, if you think about it, I mean, these waters usually don't get that warm until July because, right, usually the Caribbean and the Gulf always stay pretty warm. Maybe not so much the Gulf, but the Caribbean. And eventually the warm waters just kind of spread out, right? And kind of see it just spread out through the hurricane season. Like, if you were to look at this 2 months ago, you pretty much see all these yellows and oranges kind of confined to this area. And now they've really spread out since then. But once we get towards September, that's usually where the peak of those higher sea surface temperatures are. Hence the peak of the hurricane season. Also, there's typically less, shear during that time, and dry air as well is pretty low. We take a look here at the past 7 days, like the sea surface temperature trends. Pretty much about even. Some areas have gone up about a half degree. Some areas have dropped about a half degree Celsius. But all in all, the MDR is pretty much stayed the same here in terms of sea surface temperature trends. Although the Gulf and the Gulf of Mexico and the North Atlantic have certainly got quite a bit warmer, about 1 to 1.5 degrees Celsius. Right. If we take a look here at the oceanic heat content, you can see, so here's where the storm is right now. Not much, when I say oceanic heat content, I mean how much heat is available below the ocean surface, right? We looked at the sea surface temperature just a moment ago, but what is below that ocean surface, like those warmer waters deep down, really help get a tropical storm and a hurricane forming. So we do see low amounts, and that's even impressive for this time of year because it usually doesn't happen yet. We see pretty low amounts, almost minimal, but once it gets closer to the Lesser Antilles, though, it starts to go up, that oceanic heat content. So that could be something to watch, but also you have to watch how the dry air and the wind shear progress, which we'll take a look at as well. Caribbean, it's pretty high still right now. I mean, it's spreading into the Gulf of Mexico as well. It will continue to over the next couple of months here. All right, we take a look at the tropical intensity index. This basically just kind of lays out how favorable is a certain area for development. The storm is like off your screen to the right. You can see the Lesser Antilles down here. You can see the rest of the Caribbean looking pretty unfavorable, highly unfavorable, especially in the Gulf of Mexico. We do see some favorability though. The Bahamas kind of in this zone here. All right, so some favorability up in this zone just to the east of the Lesser Antilles. But again, this could certainly change and evolve over the next 5 to 7 days as this invest kind of makes its track. Sorry about that. Makes its track along to the west here. We take a look at the precipitable water. Let me just give it a little refresh here. We take a look at the precipitable water. You can see where there's a lot of it. I mean, you can really see that precipitable water buildup. And that, basically, think of it as like the higher precipitable water we have, the more moisture we can wring out of the clouds, and more moisture and then more rain can fall from those clouds. And you can see these thunderstorms are really getting going here because that precipitable water values are looking pretty high. All right, as much as 3 inches on this graph here. So definitely looking like, and that doesn't mean you're going to see at most 3 inches of rain. That's just kind of like a gauge to show you how much there is. So you can see, yeah, definitely a lot of precipitable water content there coming off the coast of Africa, and that's definitely one of the things we've been watching there. And you can see, of course, some more moisture as it makes its way off of Africa. Well, there could be even another little system behind this one, so we'll see that in the modeling here a little bit. No spoilers. We take a look here at, so this is basically a combination of the NCEP, FNMOC, and the Canadian ensembles here to kind of show you where we do have that about 50% chance of development according to these sets of models for this system. I'm actually not aware of a system off the Carolinas. Maybe they think something could form there. I think there's a low pressure system around that area that could certainly spin up into something, but I don't believe it's anything the National Hurricane Center is watching right now, unless they just put it there. That would be funny. Okay, no, there's no other areas to watch right now, but certainly could be something to watch maybe as we head further on down the line here. Yeah, with the system we're watching though, about 50% chance over the next 5 days according to them. Maybe if this graph were made for 7 days, maybe it would be a little bit higher. We look at the NCEP ensemble-based probabilities though, right, because that was taking the average of 3 ensembles. So if we look at just the NCEP, you can see that we have potentially as high as like a 70-80% chance of development, which is pretty much what the National Hurricane Center was saying. We see a lot of ensemble tracks too, again, in the general direction of the Lesser Antilles. Majority of these models actually have it going out to sea, with that Bermuda high potentially weakening, but some do have it tracking closer to the Caribbean and even the United States, so something to certainly watch here. If you take a look at the wind steering for the 700 to 850 millibar heights here, you can see there's that like Bermuda high, if you will, that high pressure that sits over the Northern Atlantic here near Bermuda, and that's going to help take this system that's around here, and it's going to help to steer it kind of in this direction towards Lesser Antilles. Now, if it stays strong, it could either, especially if we see if this moves south or another high forms, it could get pushed in the Caribbean. It could stay where it is, and the storm could actually just loop around it, or it could get even stronger, push a little bit further to the west, and barring any other troughs or jet streams coming in from the east, the storm could kind of take a turn like this. All possibilities right now, just because it's so far out in time. But yeah, so just to recap here, maybe a Caribbean track, maybe a track towards the U.S., maybe a track away from the U.S. So those are looking like our options as of right now. Here it is on windy.com, the more detailed, if you will, sea surface temperature map that I was telling you guys about. So if we look at where the storm is right now, sitting at about 80, 81, maybe closer to 82, in the very low 80s for sea surface temperatures. And while that is good, as it makes a trek further on to the west-northwest, watch what happens to these sea surface temperatures. We're starting to see 83, 84. So yes, with the buildup of sea surface temperatures as we head out through time, with the buildup of that oceanic heat content, that subsurface heat could build over time. And, of course, barring any wind shear or dry air, this system could even get, we could even see the favorability conditions go up even more, right? So we look at right now where the water vapor is. You can see not much in the way of dry air. It's kind of being shielded right now, if you will. But it could be heading into some dry air over the next 5 to 7 days. But again, this is just a current snapshot. So by the time the storm actually gets to here, this map could look different, right? It's kind of like if you're on Google, if you're using Google Maps, for example, and you're going on a drive, it might say 7 hours, but let's say you might be driving through New York. When you get to New York, it might not be busy now, but it could be busy later. That kind of applies to this. All right, so this map will definitely look different once the storm actually gets to here, but this is just like a current snapshot. But dry air could be a hinder on the system as we again head through the next few days. But as of right now, it's sitting in a pretty favorable area and probably will continue to over the next couple of days, at least in terms of the dry air. Wind shear, I was really surprised by this because I thought, oh, storm forms out here, it's just going to get killed by wind shear. It's just there this time of year. But I mean, it's not really in much right now, and it's going to kind of stay to the south to avoid this big pocket here. Again, this will look different over the next few days, but it kind of stays in like some low to medium shear. Right? I wouldn't say there'd be zero, but there's definitely some. But definitely, it's nothing that would kill the system, right, until you get to out here closer to the Caribbean, some high shear out here as well. But nothing really looking too bad. Again, we'll see how this looks over the next several days. But as of right now, it's sitting in a pretty conducive environment in terms of wind shear, meaning low wind shear, because high wind shear would tear these systems apart, kind of like rip them apart. If we look at the relative humidity map, as for the HWRF model, you might think, well, why the relative humidity map? Well, not only does it show a good gauge of like the moisture content, but also it kind of shows the upper level winds as well to kind of show how the storm is stacked. Because you see the surface low on your map with the red L right there, but we also get to see mid to upper level winds. Meaning if they're all going in the same direction, right? Because we know low pressure, we know the storm rotates kind of counterclockwise like this. So if the mid and upper level winds are also going in that direction, we know the storm is stacked pretty well, that there's not that much shear tearing it apart, and that it's getting organized. And that's why I like showing this map. So as we head, this is about 2 days from now, it's like early Monday. And you can see, while it's starting to get a little rotation in the upper level winds, in general, we still kind of see winds going like this. So they're starting to bend, but they're not rotating completely. So it's getting there. The winds are still crossing the system now. But as we head, we keep going here. Now as we start to get to Tuesday morning, like 24 hours from this point that we just showed on Monday, you can start to see those upper level winds, if you look closely, starting to rotate around that system now. And it's starting to become more stacked. Also, these bands of moisture, these rain bands here are starting to get pretty strong, and we're starting to see it kind of develop into a tropical storm. Now it's a hurricane here, and a pretty strong one at that. Now we're starting to see something even better. Not only are the winds rotating around the low at this point, but now we start to see a lack of moisture in the center, a perfect circle, meaning that dry core. That means like an eye is starting to form. All right, so now we're talking like Cat 2 plus here in terms of a hurricane, according to the HWRF model, which, by the way, is a pretty good intensity model. So you keep that in mind, but we're going to show other models here in just a bit. And you can see the storm getting even stronger, 967 millibars, with still that dry air core in the middle, which, of course, you know, the peaceful, the eye of the hurricane, which is what we like to see here for strengthening and development. We take a look at the wind here. This is the HWRF, the same model. It's kind of like a parent, though. So it's kind of like this. I think of this is more like a zoomed out map. And I know the wind function, the wind's hard to see there, but if you look at the top right of your screen, you can see what the winds are. So winds of 81.5 knots. We just kind of fast forwarded here to Tuesday night. So yeah, we're well in. I believe we're pretty close to Cat 2 status. We're pretty much on the high end of Cat 1 at this point, right? And as we head into Wednesday, all right, now we're at Cat 2 status, and now by Thursday, now this only goes at 126 hours, the HWRF model, but 96.1 knots here. So that is about on the threshold, if not slightly just below. I believe that's right on the threshold for a Category 3 hurricane. So yes, major, and if we were to extend this out, it will probably keep strengthening. But yeah, 960 millibars of pressure. And you can still see that Bermuda high is there, but it's kind of backed off to the east a little bit. So that would open the door for a potential off-coast, no real threats kind of track here. But there would still be a lot of waves for both the east coast of the U.S. and the Caribbean if this track were to hold strong as of right now. Take a look at the GFS model. Take a look at the winds here. They have it becoming a tropical storm, actually, by tomorrow night, interestingly enough. And then progressing through the day, we can see hitting hurricane strength by, looks like overnight Wednesday into early Thursday. 64 knots is the threshold. It's at 63.7, so it's like ever so close. But yeah, there's your strong wind core right there. Northeast of center, which ideally enough is what you want. It's typically where the stronger part of the storm is, the strongest winds, the heaviest rain, usually on that northeastern center, northeast of center, excuse me. You can see that weaker winds in the middle, kind of starting to form an eye a little bit. You can see now at this point it's a Category 1 hurricane, maybe closer to Category 2, then it starts to weaken as it makes that track to the north and off into the Atlantic Ocean. All right, if we take a look here at Invest 92L on the European model, they actually don't have it becoming as strong. They don't have it becoming a tropical storm. There's like a little speck here of tropical storm force winds. Monday morning, but they really don't have it becoming that much stronger. It starts to develop a little bit, maybe like 45 knots, 50 knots. It hits the Western Antilles as a weak tropical storm and then just kind of fades into the Dominican Republic and Haiti. So yeah, European model was definitely a little bit of an outlier, like the GFS, the HWRF, and all these other models that we showed you today had it becoming pretty strong. But the European seems to be the one outlier. So we'll definitely keep you guys updated here. Potential tropical storm, potential hurricane, all possibilities here with Invest 92L. So thank you guys for watching. Stay tuned for more updates. I am the Weather Dude signing off. Till next time, I'll catch you guys in the next video.